to invite me back, I don't think. There is a new Lucifer book out now, but it's being written by a different writer, Holly Black, because I'm engaged elsewhere. I'm not writing any monthly ongoing comic books at the moment. I'm mainly writing miniseries, which are things that I can fit in between the novels and the screenplays and so on. I loved Lucifer because I never wrote him as kind of an incarnation of evil. I wrote him as an incarnation of willpower, of the selfless individual will. You know, he's not somebody who is evil for the sake of it. He's just somebody who pursues his own path. And if you get in his way for whatever reason, he will just destroy you without a second thought. But I think that selfishness, that utter solipsism, is fascinating to explore. I think my Lucifer is very similar to Milton's Satan in Paradise Lost, and even more so to Blake's adversary in The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, where it's not really about good and evil. It's about how you relate to the world. It's about the energy of the human will and what you use that energy for.
Il y a une autre série que je voudrais aborder dans vos comics, c'est The Writer, que je ne prononce pas très bien. L'histoire d'un garçon qui a perdu son père et qui va passer dans un autre monde pour aller le chercher. Histoire à la fois classique. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous donner un petit peu vos influences, puis après comment vous avez travaillé dessus?
There were a lot of things that came together with Unwritten. The main artist on Lucifer over the whole of its run, over all those 6 years, was Peter Gross. He came on board with issue 5 and he stayed for the whole run, and working with him was wonderful. You know, he's one of the artists who has actually taught me about storytelling, and we came to the end of Lucifer and we really wanted to work together again, and we pitched lots and lots of different ideas to Vertigo. I think we pitched something like 30 different possible stories, and we just kept bouncing off. They weren't interested, and we went away. I did X-Men for some years. Peter did a book called American Jesus with Mark Miller, but then we met up again in San Diego, and Pornsack, who was one of the Vertigo editors at that time, was there too, and the three of us sat down and just talked about possible stories. And I had just read the autobiography of Christopher Mill. You know the Winnie the Pooh stories, Winnie l'ourson? The little boy from those stories, Christopher Robin. He was a real person. He was the son of the author, A.A. Milne, Christopher Robin Milne. And the stories began as bedtime stories to that boy. And then his father decided at a certain point he would publish the stories. And they became incredibly famous, which meant that Christopher Robin became famous as a fictional character in his father's books. And it almost destroyed his life. It had a terrible effect on his childhood. He was bullied at school. He was a very shy boy, and in those pictures he almost looks like a girl. He wears a long coat that is almost like a dress. And he was bullied by kids at school who used the books and used the little poems from the books to mock him and taunt him. And when he wrote in his autobiography, The Enchanted Places, I felt as if my father had stolen my childhood from me and left me nothing but the empty fame of being his son. So we kind of thought that was an interesting starting point for a story. A guy who is famous, but famous on somebody else's terms. You know, a fame that he has no control over, has no say in, which I think is kind of it's very much a feature of our times. That celebrity can be a blessing or a curse, depending on what sort of what face you're able to put to the world, put out to the world. So we decided to write that story, but instead of Tom's father writing Winnie the Pooh, Tom's father wrote the Harry Potter novels, effectively. So Tom is famous as the boy wizard, and then discovers one day that he can do magic. He can actually do magic, and he has to sort of face the terrifying possibility that he might be the fictional character. That he might not be real at all. He might be absolutely contingent on his father's writing. So that was the biggest influence, I think. And some things like the Golden Trumpet came in from Hindu mythology. But really, we decided at a certain point that we would just make it a love letter to all of the stories that we loved growing up, all the stories that shaped our lives. Because ultimately, I think Stories do shape your life. Stories are the kind of the skeleton of your imagination. We build ourselves on stories. To a large extent, we are stories. So that was our main theme.
Justement, je voudrais rebondir un petit peu. Voilà une série un peu sur l'enfance. Quel est votre rapport justement à l'enfance? Et quand on est auteur, quand on met en scène et qu'on se sert de l'enfance, quelle part est-ce que vous avez mis de vous-même?
That's a tough question. I guess I agree with, I can't remember who said this, but somebody said that adults are just ruined children, just spoiled children. I think there's a sense in which that's true. As a child, you are emotionally open and you're open to experience in a way that most adults can't get close to. So I do see childhood as kind of a lost paradise. I don't think that's necessarily to do with the innocence of childhood. I think it's just to do with the fact that for children, everything, you as a child, you live in a world that is incredibly vivid and intense, where any experience can just like fill your mind to bursting. And as an adult, looking back on that vividness, you can kind of relive it, can't you? You can kind of remember the things that, as a kid, just blew your mind wide open, and they still have power for you. And I guess one of the challenges as a writer is trying to find that vividness again, trying to find a way back to that intensity of experience.
En même temps, vous parlez de paradis perdu, mais que ce soit dans cette série-là ou dans celle qui a tous les dons, vos enfances à vous, en tant qu'écrivain en tout cas, sont loin d'être des paradis.
Yeah, we lived a sort of fairly squalid existence, but I think I was lucky. I was lucky in some ways. I was lucky because we were very, very poor. This was in Liverpool in the 1950s and 60s. It was a city which had been a big industrial powerhouse, and it had also been a big naval shipyard, a big place where large ships came to unload from America. So it had been very, very prosperous. And in the 60s, all of that was falling apart. All of the shipping had gone to Scotland. All of the factories were closing down. Britain was losing its industrial base. For most of my childhood, my parents were out of work, going from job to job. So we were, it was a fairly desperate existence on that level. But we were, I think we were a fairly cohesive family. We were dysfunctional. We were all over the place, but we loved each other, and our parents were very, very solicitous of us. I think it was kind of midway between heaven and hell, which probably most childhoods are.
Je voudrais terminer avec, fermer un petit peu la page des comics, mais avant de la fermer, je voudrais qu'on parle quand même des X-Men. Vous avez travaillé sur les X-Men, pareil, c'est comment est-ce qu'on bosse sur une série d'une telle ampleur?
I was lucky in that I'd been a fan. I read a lot of Marvel comics in the 60s and 70s. I read all of the original run of X-Men, and I picked up when Claremont brought the X-Men back, and Chris Claremont brought the X-Men back with issue 92, 93. I picked them up again then and read them for many years after that. By the time I came to write X-Men, there was something like 6,000 issues of continuity. Nobody in the world has read all of those. But I picked up bootleg CDs, illegal bootleg CDs that had entire runs of the comics, and I read and I read and I read. And I used two criteria to choose my team. I chose characters that nobody else was using at the time and nobody else seemed to want to use, and characters where I thought, yeah, I could do something interesting with that relationship, with that voice. I felt like I could actually use that character to do some interesting things. So I chose Rogue, who I've always loved and who has been criminally underused. I chose Mystique because the Rogue-Mystique relationship is cool and messed up in interesting ways. I chose Sabretooth because he's dangerous and off the leash. I just put together this terribly dysfunctional and unstable team so that you could, when they go into battle, they're kind of battling each other as well as the enemy. So that was what I was aiming to do. There's a cast of thousands in Extrait at this point. You know, at any given time, there's only like a dozen characters who are in the spotlight, and you can choose any of the others and do what you like with them.
Dans le même temps, vous allez commencer à publier des romans. Comment est-ce que la transition s'est faite, si c'est une transition? Est-ce que vous continuez à travailler sur les livres en même temps que vous faisiez du comics? Comment ça s'est passé?
It happened because of the comics. Because as I say, when I was in my 20s, I often submitted, I submitted a lot of novels to publishers and was rejected many times. But I think once certainly now, once you've achieved success in any kind of writing, you can kind of take it and use it as an entry ticket to other kinds of writing. So I went to Orbit, which is a British science fiction imprint. It's actually owned by a French publisher, Hachette. And I said, look, I'm writing this book. It was Hellblazer, John Constantine. I was writing that book at the time. I said, you know, this is a comic I'm writing. I would like to pitch a book series which has a similar flavour. It will feel a little bit like this. So I used the comics as a calling card and as a pitch. And they accepted. They gave me a 3-book deal. And by that time, as I say, having written comics for the best part of 10 years, I was much more confident about structure, and I was much more proficient at structuring a story. Because when you write a comic, the thing about a comic is it's a small canvas, and it's a canvas of an absolutely fixed size. You have 22 pages, or you have 20 pages, or if it's a graphic novel, you have 96 pages, and you can't argue with it. That is your space, and you have to work entirely within it. And so you become a miser. You think, oh, can I do that scene in 3 pages, or can I squeeze it down to 2? Can I have a splash page here? So it forces you to make conscious decisions about structure. Coming out of that into writing novels are easy because the canvas is however big you want it to be.